This is about a woman, some say a feminine spirit, whose life story was purged from humanity's early world, and whose bright future, home, and hope were given to another. Lilith's beguiling and demonic image has shaped our thoughts and reflections about womankind for millennia. Maybe it's time to rethink the myth of this first Eve. Our cultures have done so much in some ways, but survival is always tilted in favor of the most wicked among us. And those big meanies always write the history. They seem to carry a grudge wherever they go. Lilith is one of the oldest female spirits of this world. She likely entered human thought in the Upper Paleolithic, though recorded much later in the Epic of Gilgamesh. But she's also described in Hebrew textual interpretation known as Rabbinic Midrash, the Bible, and the Talmud. I wanted to write about Lilith Ascending and see through eyes of today why she was so cast in shame. Every creation myth connects we humans to a pantheon of deities. It's about which tribe has the most fearsome big brother to keep those other desert dwellers out of your tent. One purpose of our mythologies is to make us seem immortal and connected, as if we tiny humans matter to the universe and could hop on God's coattails and groove right into his house. Ancient writings show that stories of Lilith are nonsensical and contradictory, perhaps because they were adjusted periodically to reinforce cultural norms. Look closely and you'll see that certain of the mythologies we treasure fit a pattern which diminishes womankind, helping males to dictate any woman's place in the home or in society. Many mythologies say that human frailty brought death upon the earth. While it's true that life is fragile in all its forms, why is that connected directly to women in the old legends? We see those frailties blamed on women throughout religious history, starting with the Adam of Genesis. Can we ever know our true creation story? Would the real events, now hidden behind veils of deep time, reflect a caring and loving Creator who is proud of his children, not ashamed of them? When science fantasy author Lee Baldwin began to pick these mythologies apart, the first question he wanted to ask was, who is Lilith? Someone at the table answered, the destroyer. That's the deal. We loosely understand Lilith as an evil female spirit associated with Satan, without having solid history to back it up. Lilith is a name that's often thrown around among evil and demonic characters in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The most common mythical image is that Lilith is some kind of female demon who preys on men through sexual desire, though she was originally human and the first wife of Adam. But she supposedly went all demonic to get revenge. Some people will inform you that our word lullaby derives from Lilith Abbey, which is Hebrew for Lilith begone. Supposedly she was bad and dangerous around children, and mothers needed a bedtime chant to feel safe. But any triangulation of meaning based on ancient language comparison is devilish difficult because we're talking about a time period from 2800 before Common Era, when the Epic of Gilgamesh was written, leading up to around 700 Common Era. For example, in early Sumerian, the south wind spirit was Ninlil, wife of Enlil, lord of the wind. As Sumerian mythology morphed into Babylonian, it may be that Ninlil became Lylitu, who is either an evil spirit in the Semitic legend or the first wife of Adam in Hebrew folklore. So with one simple name shift, we are already at the door of the Abrahamic Lilith tales. If she was Adam's first wife, then she must be in the Bible, right? Not so fast. In Jewish tradition, Lilith was a demon who was believed to steal children's souls in the night. To guard against Lilith, mothers would hang amulets inscribed with the names of 3 angels. So here's that tale. But first, a brief linguistic detour. Here's what Lilith looks like pronounced as Lylit in Hebrew. It's spelled Lamed Yod Tav, which looks like this, quite simple and elegant. In the 3 centuries before 1000 Common Era, Jewish scholars began interpreting Genesis 1:26-27 to mean that Lilith was the woman God created at the same time as Adam, both formed from clay and dust. This woman was not Eve, who was created later in Genesis 2:22. This interpretation means that woman was created twice by God for Adam. Folklore says Lilith was an independent thinker, and Adam informed her she would be subservient to him. Being a sensible woman, she left Adam and Eden in her dust. This is where things again get mixed up. Eve, Lilith, and Adam were created as human beings, without wings, not spirits or demons. And Lilith's street cred takes another dive when by some accounts she hooks up with the archangel Samael, who was Archangel Lucifer's ally in the war against heaven. We know how that one turned out. According to various rabbinic texts, God sent 3 angels after Lilith. They determined that if she would not come back to Adam, she must permit them to kill 100 of her children every day. 100? Children? At that juncture, there were no children on earth, since the only woman had dumped the only man. Lilith supposedly told the angels that Jehovah had entrusted her with the care of all newborn children, and also that she was created to cause sickness to infants. This story is contradictory beyond belief. Does it mean God created the first woman as a demon who spawned demons every day and made babies sick? Was Lilith fashioned by God to be a killer? Maybe she was only a convenient personification of infant crib death. Rabbinic midrash, which are scholarly texts not in the Talmud, later claimed that Lilith was created in the same way as Adam, but that God used impure clay and filth to make her. Does this mean God intended woman to be impure? Who was it back then who claimed to know the mind of God? Other details of Lilith's bargain with the 3 angels were that if she encountered a male infant, she'd have up to 8 days after birth to kill him. If the baby was female, she would have up to 12 days, or 20 days in some translations. But supposedly, whenever she saw the angels' names on an amulet, she would have no power over that infant. That bargain gives little girl babies up to 2.5 times the likelihood of being killed, supposedly by Lilith. Who made up that rule? But the dismissal and sexist identification of women with evil was already established in the Old Testament. From Genesis onward, Eve versus the serpent is the proxy battle for a political struggle waged between prophets of Yahweh and the Canaanite cult of Baal. Much of the Old Testament can be read as an extended Yahwist propaganda tract. Lilith's one biblical reference in the book of Isaiah's many translations variously called her a night creature, a monster hag, the maid of desolation, or a screech owl. The owl, however, is symbolic of intuition and the ability to see what others cannot. The owl also symbolizes wisdom and change. But like the later medieval succubi of Europe, various descriptions of Lilith were likely used in the ancient world to excuse the natural phenomenon of nocturnal emission. No, Mom, a demon lady made me do it. Would anyone conclude that God's first experiment with marriage went bad, which led to a second try with a more submissive wife? Or can we best interpret that Genesis was rewritten to support a patriarchal social order by condemning any woman with an independent mind? According to Judith Plaskow, Jewish feminist and theologian, Jewish law of the Torah is a patriarchal construction which preaches the fundamental otherness of women. This means Lilith is impure, a demon, a seducer of men, and beneath any man. Lilith is a woman, therefore all women share those traits. So, would further shaming of womankind not follow the same warped logic? The alphabet of Ben Sirach is an anonymous text of the Middle Ages inspired by a Hellenistic work known as the Sirach, written between 700 and 1000 Common Era. It is 2 lists of proverbs, 22 written in Jewish Babylonian Aramaic and 22 in Mishnaic Hebrew. The work has been characterized as satire and contains references to nocturnal emission, incest, and flatulence. About half of the proverbs are borrowed from the Talmud. In the alphabet, Lilith appears as Adam's first wife, a first Eve, created at the same time and from the same clay as Adam. Do the book of Genesis and later tales claim that God did it wrong? Or is it the centuries of agenda-laden retellings which are so off-key? This contrasts with Eve, who is created from one of Adam's ribs in Genesis chapter 2:22, a legend developed extensively during the Middle Ages in the tradition of Jewish mysticism. They just keep fixing history to fit the present. The absence of Lilith from the Bible is supposedly due to councils of men who defined the canonical verses, which makes their writing a political message. Lilith, as a strong and independent woman, went against patriarchal social structure. The Bible went on to become a cornerstone of Judeo-Christian culture, and Lilith was completely written out, except for that one oblique and damning reference in Isaiah. Some today think it was the male-driven patriarchy that hijacked the concept of Lilith to run a smear campaign and purposely weaken women's value in society. Her sin was one of independence, but it is man who is dependent on woman, for without her, no man becomes a father. But Adam, as a way of asserting superiority over Lilith, insisted that she lie beneath him during sex. Lilith refused, considering herself to be Adam's equal. After pronouncing the ineffable name, the magic name of God, she flew off into the air. Wait a second. She'd just been created by God as a human being, so where did the wings come from? And that ineffable name might have sounded like, gosh darn it. As Barbara Black Koltuv in the Book of Lilith quotes the Babylonian Talmud, Lilith, a female demon of the night, has a human likeness, but she also has wings. The Bible does not provide that detail. There is one rabbinic midrash quoted as, "It is forbidden for a man to sleep alone in a house, lest Lilith get hold of him." Why is that? Psychotherapy and dream analysis weren't around back then, so people were more inclined to mistake dreams for reality. Maybe Lilith started out as the queen of dreams. But already we see that the ancients were looking for cause and effect in the spirit world rather than going after germs and hygiene. Maybe in Lilith, the ancients were trying to deal with an ordinary bacteria that killed infants while they slept. The status jobs in that early world were priests and philosophers, not the study of medicine. Childbirth in the ancient world was risky to mother and child. Could simply washing one's hands before assisting in childbirth have made a difference? Or was it easier to make up complicated stories about a female demon? To that I would say sure, if it serves your political purpose. But what is in it for males to make the opposite gender seem a useful pariah? Was all this female bashing only the patriarchy trying to claim women as things to own? And can we know our origin story as it actually happened, not as handed down verbally for 50 centuries by people with faulty memories and private agendas? In 2013, science fiction author Lee Baldwin published the science fantasy novel Next History. In this novel, humankind's actual creation story was revealed by an unusual source, the Akashic Record. The novel is a modern mythology of humankind's struggle against its own lesser nature, which reframes the path of Lilith in the world. The first we hear of Lilith in this novel is a dream visit to a young woman, softly whispering, "You need a larger pentagram." Baldwin develops what might happen when an ordinary mortal summons Lucifer into the traditional pentagram. Lilith does say a larger one. In the novel, Lilith is pursued down the ages by 108 fallen angels who gave up their wings to enjoy the good life on our planet as special ones. You know, Singers, rock stars, film people, exceptional dancers, athletes. Whenever these dark angels spot Lylit, they pursue, torture, and kill her in gruesome fashion. She calls out for her partner Lucifer, but he is forbidden to come to Earth. So she must painfully pull herself back into existence in some wild, desolate place again and again. In Middle Eastern mythology, there are many fictional creatures made of parts from various animals, much like the Egyptian gods. These are called chimera, which is also a medical term for a fused human fetus. In the next history of Lylit, a heavenly angel named Raziel seduces a woman who is newly with child but has released a second egg. He tells Lilith she can occupy the second fetus until birth and should have a perfect hiding place while awaiting Lucifer's return. Lilith agreed, but was surprised when her embryo fused with the woman's first one to become a chimera. That fusion of two embryos was born as a normal baby girl, which kept Lilith safe hidden. When the grown woman decides to summon Lucifer, she breaks the spell keeping him from visiting Earth, and fallen angels begin to die by the dozen. And Lilith, still hiding within the young woman, picks this time to want out as a separate being. The key to Lilith's presence in the novel is seeing her act with a woman's values, not some bacteria-like impure demon concocted by political enemies from the rabbinic and biblical myths. And that's when the rebirth of the feminine divine lives again among womankind. Here in the pages of Next History is a modern chapter of Lilith's mythology, more connected to quantum physics, the limitless Akasha, and consciousness than it is to Sumerian fables. So who is Lilith? Is she the mythical product of hostile intentions against womankind, inspired by the work of bacteria? Perhaps she's, as one ancient rabbi describes, a first Eve, a golden bell. It is she who troubled me all night. Why do not other dreams exhaust a man? Yet this does exhaust a man. Because from the very beginning of her creation, she was but in a dream. At the end of Next History, just before you close the book, a shining figure stands in sunlight where the women wait, eager in rising consciousness to know again the words of Lilith.